we're Ralph and Lahni DeAmicis back with another episode of Planetary Calendar, and this time we're going to be doing the forecast for September 2018. I need the cheaters, so here we go. This month is full of planets changing signs and directions, so stay on your toes. While events are generally good, you'll need to adjust quickly to twists in the currents. On the 5th, a positive bump comes from Mercury, who is moving fast, making paperwork progress quickly, entering his ruling sign of Virgo, so organization reigns until the 21st when he enters Libra and indecisiveness sneaks in. On the 6th, another positive shift comes with Saturn turning direct in his ruling sign Capricorn. Taken together, this helps all practical projects progress nicely. On the heels of this comes the new moon on the 9th, with the Sun conjunct Moon opposite Neptune, balancing between practical and creative, personal and global. Coincidentally, on the 9th, Venus enters determined Scorpio, and then Mars enters Aquarius on the 10th. We have this other pair of changes on day to day.
Very interesting.
These two squaring off can make relationships difficult, intense, and erratic. Be patient with loved ones. Much is going on beneath the surface. On the 11th, carrying over to the 12th, two sextiles and a profound trine make this a potent time to initiate projects. Finally, after these quick changes, it is smooth sailing for the next 8 days, with a nice boost on the 19th from the Sun trine Moon. Don't we love that Sun trine Moon? We really do. On the 21st, Mercury, still moving fast, enters Libra, so discussions become complicated. The 22nd is the autumnal equinox, the first day of Libra. On the 24th, the full moon arrives, a powerful lunation at 1 degree Libra opposite 1 degree Aries, squared by Saturn conjunct the asteroid Vesta in Capricorn. Conflicting sides defer to the adult voices speaking about practicalities, ambition, and dedication. The white circle on the 29th pushes projects forward. On the 30th, Pluto turns direct and the transformation progresses.
Yes.
We've had a lot of transformation this year, haven't we?
It's been a very transformative
I should be a butterfly.
Year. Yes. Oh my gosh. Who was it? Was it Buddha or the Dalai Lama who said that what the caterpillar thinks of the end, the butterfly thinks of as the beginning?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So it is a very interesting month, and there's so many planets changing signs so quickly for a while there that you may feel these, like bumps in the road, and that normally happens. When Mercury enters Virgo on the 5th, though, this is Mercury entering his ruling sign, and Mercury's very, very strong in Virgo, and so as Mercury's moving through there, he's also moving very fast. And this is a phenomena we deal with in astrology. When Mercury moves fast, projects move along really well, especially any project dealing with communications. You have to get contracts signed, you have to get paperwork done, you have to, reach out to people. Everything just click, 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 real quick, and Mercury's moving fast throughout the month, though when it gets to the 21st, it does move into Libra, and Libra always likes more discussion.
Yeah, and I want to say that the difference between the Mercury rulerships is very interesting because it has the masculine rulership of Gemini, and there the ideas fly fast and furious, but in Virgo, those ideas get done. And so it's just kind of a different way that Mercury acts in its feminine and masculine rulership.
Now, the day after Mercury enters Virgo on the 6th, Saturn turns direct. Now, when a planet turns direct, sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. But this is Saturn in Capricorn, his feminine ruling sign. So, and realize that Virgo trines Capricorn. So there's two different feminine signs in a trine to each other. So Mercury is going to be empowering Saturn as well. But when a planet that's in rulership turns direct, you will feel it. And part of the kind of positive, you might say positive, but determined growth that we've seen this year that people have gotten forward in terms of the economy. So it's just been in part thanks to Saturn in Capricorn. I also like to say that since Saturn's been in Capricorn, if you notice in the media, that fathers are all being treated nicer.
Well, and I was just going to mention that this particular stabilization that Mercury and Saturn find themselves in may well bode well for improved relationships between the child, Mercury, and the father, Saturn. So look for that opportunity wherever that may show up in your life about, just improving that or stabilizing those relationships between those archetypal energies,
Yes, which is going to make up for the fact that on the 9th and the 10th, Venus enters Scorpio, not as especially strong position for the sign, but Mars enters Aquarius, so it's still a Saturn-ruled sign, but it's not the exaltation position, and they're square to each other.
Well, I was just going to say, Scorpio and and Aquarius are squares to each other. So it means that they don't really have a point of commonality. And especially in relationships, Mars, Venus are very important for personal relationships, and so if Venus is sort of representative of how you feel about yourself as being lovable, and Mars is how you kind of send out your love to other people that you love, you can see these are kind of at odds. So a little bit mixed signals, in relationships, or cross purposes, maybe, to put it in a politically correct way.
Venus in Scorpio is the woman who wants to know that their lover loves them and wants to make sure they don't blink when they say it. Mars in Aquarius is the guy who's kind of distracted with the world and isn't really paying attention to his girl, who's looking at him and wanting him not to blink. So you can see where there could be a little bit of a conflict here. It's the distant man and the intense woman. And, I think they do have a point of commonality. The problem is they both want to have their way.
Well, they're both fixed signs, too,
Yeah,
so
both
there
fixed
you've got
signs,
that.
exactly.
But luckily on the 11th, there's a nice white circle day.
Right.
It doesn't involve actively Mars or Venus, but maybe you can kind of put that on the back burner and you can use the energies of Jupiter and Pluto and the Sun
Yes.
effectively on the 11th.
Right, and remember, if you can't talk to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your spouse, at least you could talk to your kids, because they would like to talk with you, apparently, thanks to Mercury and Saturn.
There you go.
So
There you go.
And then the 9th is the new moon, so energy's building from that point. And then, like we said, after this group of ingresses, which is what you call it when a planet changes sign, we actually have a nice kind of span there that goes all the way up past Yom Kippur on the 18th. And then finally, the Mercury is the next thing that's happening. And remember, it's first fast-moving Mercury, it's moving quick, is entering Libra. And it enters Libra the day before the Sun enters Libra. So this is a little bit like having a little child running right in front of you in the door. You get to the grandma's house and the kids are in the door before you even have a chance to knock.
Right.
Because they feel they have complete access.
But that is from the 12th to the 20th. It's kind of the breath in.
Yeah, exactly.
The turbulence kind of winds down a little bit. You kind of settle into what the planetary energies are for, a good more than a week.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting is that the Mercury being right there, whatever planet is near the Sun when it enters an ingress, and these ingresses, 1 degree Aries, 1 degree Libra, 1 degree Cancer, 1 degree Capricorn, are very powerful. And these are what's called the beginning of the cardinal signs, but they're power points. So some of the reasons why we mark them in our society, because it's a global turning point for us each year. So Mercury being there has a lot to do with the importance of children, the children's voices, and it's moving fast. And this year has been a year where children's voices have been very
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
I think that's going to continue for quite some time.
And it's in the sign of Libra, the sign of justice and partnership.
Well, and go back and think about that in relation to this Mercury and Saturn on the 5th and the 6th, and see if we don't see some more activity with regard to young people's voices being heard as the voices of authority in our society.
Yeah, and then I say here, on the 24th, the full moon arrives, a powerful lunation with 1 degree Libra, opposite degree 1 degree Aries, squared by Saturn conjunct the asteroid Vesta in Capricorn. So you have the sun, moon, and then you have Vesta tied up with Saturn. Vesta is the asteroid all about mission.
Dedication.
Right, a
Mission,
belief to a concept, a willing to sacrifice themselves for a mission. As that Vesta was the daughter who kept the fires burning for the father while he was away.
And of course, Libra is the sign of the scales of justice.
Yes.
So there's a lot of symbolism here just reading that bit.
Right.
You know?
And then Saturn is the mature parts of our society, the parts of our society. Remember, Capricorn is a feminine sign, so it has to do with the mature women of our society.
Or the rules, the structure, the, responsibility.
Right.
It's very powerful time to take charge.
Yeah, where you might say
It's very empowering.
Aquarius is in some ways the grandfather, Capricorn is the grandmother. So that's a very powerful lunation as well on the 24th. And then finally, as the month winds up on the 29th, and there is 30 days though, you have the sun trine moon after the full moon, something we always point out because it's a great time to kind of move projects forward, and that is a white circle day on the 29th. But then on the 30th, Pluto turns direct, and Pluto is also in Capricorn. And this is why it's been interesting. When Saturn is in Capricorn, he really has a tremendous amount of power. As Mars has gone through Capricorn in exaltation, he's had a lot of
power.
And remember, these are both feminine signs. And then Pluto has been in Capricorn for an extended period of time because the outer planets stay in the sign for a long period of time. So Pluto has a lot to do with hidden elements in society. So when you team up with Pluto, you get into the kind of the fundamental core energies of the society.
Well, when you think about it, Saturn, Mars, Pluto, they're all related to power in some way or shape or form. Mars, the physical, Pluto, the mental,
right?
And or the spiritual, and Saturn, the mental or spiritual. I mean, these three are very powerful players in terms of power, powerful in power.
Yeah. Well, I also think of Pluto having a lot to do with society's innate need to reproduce. Pluto has a great deal to do with transformation. When Pluto was first discovered, it was in the years right before the Second World War. So it has a certain association with this transformational power and the ability of a generation. In the generation of a Pluto transit, it's usually about 20 years, though it varies because Pluto does not have any place close to a
normal orbit.
Orbit that it stays
Circular.
in some signs for 30 years and other signs for 10 years. But the ability of a generation to impact their society, and the boomer generation was primarily the generation of Pluto in Leo, who really stepped forward as being leaders in society. It's interesting that was when the Pluto and Cancer generation was the generation that experienced the Second World War. Well, Pluto was transformation, Cancer is the home. How many homes, how many countries were destroyed during the Second World War? Between, homes not only physically but also emotionally due to, family members lost.
And didn't the whole family as home kind of undergo a transformation by definition because there were so many changes made to what was expected of people in their normal roles in home life.
And with Pluto in Capricorn, we've seen not only a tremendous transformation in traditional structures, things like the church and society and government, these traditional structures, but also in buildings. Saturn has a lot to do, Capricorn has a lot to do with buildings, but also in terms of roles of women. Remember, Capricorn is a feminine sign. And the roles of older women in society. How many countries have women presidents throughout the world? So it's a very interesting thing when you look at these outer planets and the way they would affect society. And remember, Pluto's going direct in Capricorn on the 30th, so the changes will be slow, but they will be there. So
thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time for Planetary Calendar. So we're Ralph and Lahni DeAmicis with another Planetary Minute, or 10, about astrological subjects. Take it away, Ralph.
We're going to talk about other points in the horoscope that have significance beyond what's your sun sign and what's your moon sign and such. And it's funny because, astrology means the logic of the stars. And yet what we're normally talking about is, of course, the planets. Though in ancient times they didn't differentiate between the stars and the planets in that way, but they recognized that there was a difference between the fixed stars, as we call them, and things like Antares and Betelgeuse and such, and the wandering stars, things like Mercury and Venus and Mars. That was what they called them, the wandering stars, and then there were the fixed stars. Well, these fixed stars, these giant, suns, that many of them are much, much larger than our own sun, do have significance, and they've been recorded for centuries and centuries by pretty much every single culture.
And they're sort of the backdrop over which the planetary motions happen. And their influence is very strongly felt as we get the energy from the planet through a filter that has received this energy from what is basically amounts to these big, radio telescopes or radio signal transmitters in the sky. So there's points that people know: Spica, Polaris, the North Star, the stars in certain constellations, the Big Dipper, Orion, and we're fairly familiar with some of them, and some of them have very interesting stories and histories, and the energy filters through them in a very interesting way. And then in a forecast that we did for November, we mentioned the galactic center. So that's another point that has a big influence on the actions and the interpretations of the planets.
Exactly, and typically the ones that really set you off are the ones that are along the ecliptic. And those are the ones that are where the planets travel. So there's certain stars that are right along that line. And there's 4 stars which are known as the royal stars. And they at one time were aligned with north, south, east, and west. And I say at one time because the precession of the equinox, they've actually shifted a bit. But it was also at times when after an earthquake or after during massive eruptions, when the sky got very, very cloudy for long periods of times, these were the brighter stars that you could see even when the sky was obscured. So there's certain stars that are considered very important because they're very, very bright. One of the stars that Lahni mentioned is Spica. And Spica is at 23 degrees Libra. And it is where the Virgin and the constellation Virgo, which is the largest constellation, which was known before that as the Great Goddess, is holding a grain in her hand.
A spike of wheat.
A spike of wheat. And it is the brightest star in the constellation. Now, this is significant because realize that our modern civilization moved from the Paleo era to the modern era basically because of the ability to cultivate grains. So this is a very, very powerful thing. And what's interesting is that when people have major planets, a sun, a moon, maybe a Jupiter, aligned with Spica, one of the things that comes out in them is that they're very prolific. They're just like, people who are writers are like copy machines. Paper just spits out of them. Musicians who are tremendously prolific. Spica was a big player in that case. And so it's interesting that when you have a forecast that's going on where something's lined up with Spica, you recognize that there's going to be a lot of energy generated there.
Right. Some of these other fixed stars, these royal stars.
Right. Antares is the classic. Antares is a red giant. It's so huge it would probably encompass a major portion of our solar system. It's a very aggressive star. And what the name means actually, Antares, means like ours. Ours is Mars. So in other words, it was a big red star, kind of aggressive like Mars. They always recognized that Mars had a lot of aggressive energy. How do you recognize this stuff?
A warlike quality.
Warlike quality. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason is that the shepherds, who were many of the original astrologers, would see how Mars affected their flocks. When Mars was in certain positions, the flocks would get rammy. It's not that surprising. And Antares is like that. That's at 8 degrees Sagittarius. And you find that many people who are very martial, are great generals, people who like being in the chaos of war, have planets at Antares.
Exactly. And when that star is prominent in transiting charts as well, you find maybe that your temper is easier to ignite, or other people around you are a little bit more testy when that comes around in transits, because you see it, that it has that effect as a filter through the other transiting planets.
Like, for instance, when Mars is transiting over Antares, or sometimes Uranus transiting over Antares, there tend to be a lot of outbreaks of violence in terms of military actions, but also random violence. People acting out in horrible ways. When Mars is triggered by this planet, by
And
this star.
people who use an area of astrology called mundane astrology use this to time events. They say, oh, this situation is happening right now, and does it have anything to do with this alignment of Antares with Mars or Antares with Uranus? And we'll go back historically to other periods in history where this same alignment occurred, and see if we can find similar activity that would relate to what was going on now. So it has to do with mundane events in the world.
One of the classic stars, of course, is Regulus, which is the heart of the lion.
Makes everybody smile.
Right, exactly. And it actually does show up many times, either at the rising or connected to the sun or to the moon, of people who were great leaders.
Or royals.
Royals, exactly. So, and it's symbolic of the great heart, of great popularity, but also the great desire for popularity, the desire to be the center of attention.
Exactly. I was going to say, if you have it prominently in your chart, either at the midheaven or the rising or conjunct your Venus or in another position that makes it really personally held for you, you really do need to be treated like royalty. I mean, that's just logical.
It's a very creative position. And right now it's about at 29 degrees Leo, 1 degree Virgo. It's right on that line, this discussion about where it is. Because remember, when you're talking about the position of the stars related to, there's two zodiacs after all. There's the sidereal zodiac, which is the stellar zodiac, and there's the tropical zodiac, which is the planetary zodiac, and they fit together like two wheels in the clock. And so when you're figuring that out, sometimes there's a little variation there in terms of where it is. But it's right at that transition line.
We need to do an astrological minute or 10 about the difference between sidereal and tropical. That'll be something we'll look for soon. But
meanwhile, go on the line and look that up.
We've got the fourth star you wanted to talk about. We have Regulus, Antares, Spica.
There's Fomalhaut as well, and there's which is another one of the four royal stars, and it tends to have great sense of nobility. But I think it's what's a really interesting star that we should talk about, because we're here in wine country, is Vindiamatrix. And it's at, I think, 9 degrees Libra, as I call 9 or 10 degrees Libra. And it's the grape gatherer. Now, it's a woman, and she's gathering grapes. What's funny is you find it in the charts of many people who are involved in the wine business, but you also find it in people who have problems with drinking or drinking too much. It's the grape gatherer, so it's
Big
really
surprise.
not surprised. Vindiamatrix, and you'll find little things like that. For instance, the star Hercules, I don't recall what the degree is of it, but it showed up in the stars in the charts of famous racehorses. Which makes sense. I mean, a racehorse is a Herculean type of event. Now, what star were you think we want to talk about?
Well, there's another star that came to my mind, but I don't think that's the one that we usually talk about either. But I thought Alpha Serpentis is an interesting star to talk about. It's in Scorpio, and it's close to 20 degrees, 21 degrees Scorpio. And it's irreverently called the poison star.
Right.
So if you have that star next to or in a position that supports a personal planet, you should look for toxins in your environment or exposure and, a time of life. If it's Mercury, it might be early in life, or Venus, in the home. If you have it in the 4th house, you might look for hidden toxins in the home, because when we see that position prominent in people's charts, we often don't ask them if they're allergic to something. We ask them what they're allergic to, and we give them a pen so they can write a big list.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting star for you to think about.
And the final one we have to mention, we can't leave out, is Sirius, which is the
That's
brightest
it.
star in the sky. It's called the dog star. It's at 13 degrees Cancer currently. If that shows up in your chart, it shows a great connection to the divine. Which isn't that nice? So,
That's a perfect way to end.
yep.
We'll see you next time with another astrological minute or 10 from Ralph and Lahni.
We hope you've enjoyed the episode. You can find more episodes and other resources at our website, spaceandtime.com. If you enjoy our shows, you might find our other show, Wine Country at Work, very interesting. It's quite different from this one, and it comes out of the fact that we live in wine country. We live in the North Bay area above San Francisco Bay, where many of the most important wines in America come from. Now, what makes this interesting is that wine country is just farm country with really good restaurants. But it is a very special kind of farm country. And in today's society, where only 1% of the population is involved in agriculture, there are tremendously good lessons about the ecology, sustainability, nutrition, and quality of life that are at the forefront of the discussions that we have in this region. Like most farm regions, we're very cooperative. People take their quality of life very importantly. We have some very lively political discussions about the use of the land and how people interact with that land. We've been doing the show since 2012, and we go behind the scenes at wineries and vineyards and other types of businesses to find out why people do what they do and how do they do what they do. In other words, wine country at work. Most people see wine country as the resort area, but there's a lot of work that goes on in creating these wines and in dealing with the millions of visitors who come to this region to see what is really a remarkable culture, a great traditional culture that goes back thousands of years in human history. So you can also find that on our website at spaceandtime.com, as well as at many stations around the country. So come back and visit us again here at Planetary Calendar.